I used to believe that marriage was like the foundation work I did for a living, built on solid ground, reinforced with steel, designed to last forever. Looking back now, I realize I was laying concrete over quicksand, and Victoria had been steadily undermining the supports for years. My name is Marcus Hamilton, and this is the story of how my wife systematically destroyed our 7-year marriage while I watched, documented, and ultimately walked away with everything that mattered. Victoria and I met at a Durham Bulls game in 2018. My buddy Jake had insisted I needed to get out more after my previous relationship ended, and Victoria was there with her college roommate. She was stunning. Not just beautiful, but alive in a way that drew people to her like moths to flame. Auburn hair that caught the stadium lights, green eyes that sparkled when she laughed, and a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. "You look like you actually understand what's happening down there," she said, sliding into the seat next to mine during the 7th inning stretch. "Structural engineering teaches you to appreciate good fundamentals," I replied, gesturing toward the field. "The pitcher's mechanics are solid, efficient transfer of energy from legs through torso to arm." She laughed, a genuine sound that made my chest tighten. That's either the nerdiest or most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me at a baseball game. I was going for romantic. Mission accomplished. We talked until the last out, then moved to a nearby bar where the conversation flowed like we'd known each other for years. She was a dental hygienist at Riverside Dental Group, loved training for half marathons, and had strong opinions about everything from craft beer to urban planning. When I mentioned my hobby of building custom furniture, her eyes lit up. "You actually make things with your hands? That's incredible. Everything in my apartment is from Target or IKEA." "Well, we'll have to fix that someday." The word someday hung between us, full of possibility. We were married 18 months later in a ceremony at the Umstead Hotel. Victoria looked radiant in her grandmother's vintage dress, which we'd had altered to fit her perfectly. During our vows, she promised to love, honor, and build a beautiful life together, and I believed every word. The early years were everything I'd dreamed of. We bought a 1960s ranch house in North Hills that needed extensive renovation, and Victoria threw herself into the project with infectious enthusiasm. Weekends were spent at the farmer's market, hunting for unique fixtures at antique stores, or hosting dinner parties where Victoria would hold court, making everyone feel welcome and important. "You two are relationship goals," our friend Sarah would say, watching us move around the kitchen in perfect synchronization during these gatherings. Victoria would beam and slip her hand into mine. "We just fit, you know?" I thought we did too. Our financial life was equally harmonious. My promotion to senior project manager at Titan Construction brought our combined income to $165,000, comfortable for Raleigh. Victoria handled the day-to-day expenses with meticulous attention to detail, while I managed our investments in the savings account we'd earmarked for a dream vacation home at the Outer Banks. 20 more years, Victoria would say, scrolling through beach house listings on her laptop. "By the time we're 55, we'll have our place on the water." 20 years, I'd agree, kissing the top of her head. I should have paid more attention to when she stopped saying, "we." The first cracks. The changes started so gradually that I initially attributed them to natural evolution. People grow and change in marriage. That's healthy, right? Victoria had always been fitness conscious, but when she joined Iron Phoenix CrossFit Gym in our 4th year of marriage, her interest became an obsession. "It's not just about the workout," she explained, coming home flushed and energetic after her first session. "It's a community. These people push each other to be better." Within weeks, she was going 5 days a week. Her body transformed, becoming leaner and more defined, and with it came a new confidence that bordered on arrogance. She bought an entirely new wardrobe, athletic wear that emphasized her improved physique, going out clothes that were more revealing than anything she'd worn before. "I'm feeling myself," she'd say, admiring her reflection before heading out to grab drinks with the gym girls. The gym girls. I never met them, though Victoria talked about them constantly. There was Jenna, who was so inspiring because she'd lost 60 pounds. Ashley, who was absolutely fearless on the climbing wall. And then there was Dominic Cross, their trainer. "Dom really pushes us," Victoria would say, toweling sweat from her face. "He sees potential in people that they don't even see in themselves." Dom. She called him Dom. At the same time, Victoria began picking up extra shifts at the dental office. Dr. Patterson, she explained, had been impressed with her work ethic and was giving her more responsibilities. Emergency patients don't exactly follow banker's hours, she said when I mentioned missing her at dinner. Root canals and extractions can't wait. It made sense. Medical emergencies happened. But the timing felt off. These emergencies always seemed to occur on evenings when I was free, weekends when we'd planned activities together. My father's Parkinson's diagnosis in year 5 provided a convenient explanation for any distance I sensed between us. Dad was struggling with the early symptoms, and Mom was overwhelmed trying to adapt their home for his changing needs. I spent most weekends helping them install grab bars, build wheelchair ramps, and reorganize their living space. "Go take care of your parents," Victoria would say, waving me off with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'll catch up on work stuff." Looking back, those were the weekends she was probably with Dom. The red flags were subtle at first. Victoria started guarding her phone, taking calls in the garage or the bathroom. She claimed the reception was better there. When I'd walk into a room where she was texting, she'd quickly close the app and give me her full attention, which should have been reassuring but somehow felt performative. "Who was that?" I'd ask. "Just Ashley from the gym. She's having drama with her boyfriend." There was always a reasonable explanation. There always is when someone's lying. The financial irregularities were harder to dismiss. Cash withdrawals from our joint account that Victoria attributed to gym supplements and protein powder. The amounts were small enough, $50 or $75 at a time, that questioning them made me feel petty. "Since when do you track my spending like that?" she asked when I mentioned it. "We agreed I handle daily expenses." "I'm not tracking it. I just noticed the pattern." "What pattern? That I'm taking care of my health? I thought you'd be supportive of that." The conversation would inevitably turn into an argument about my lack of support for her self-improvement journey, and I'd end up apologizing. Victoria had a gift for making me feel like the unreasonable one. She stopped wearing her wedding ring to the gym because it pinched during deadlifts. She bought new perfume, something lighter and more floral than the warm vanilla scent I'd always associated with her. When I complimented it, she laughed. "This old thing? I've had it forever. You never notice anything." But I did notice. I noticed everything. The point of no return. Year 6 was when the lies became elaborate productions. Victoria announced that Dr. Patterson was starting a book club for the office staff, a professional development initiative to broaden their horizons. "What's the first book?" I asked. "Oh, it's contemporary women's literature. You wouldn't be interested." Every Wednesday evening, Victoria would dress up for book club. Nice jeans, carefully applied makeup, the new perfume. She'd carry a purse I'd never seen before and return home around 10:30, slightly flushed and energetic. "How was book club?" "Great. Really insightful discussion about character development." I never saw her reading. Our house had always been full of books. Victoria was a voracious reader, but during the book club months, no new titles appeared on her nightstand. The weekend dental conferences started around the same time. Charleston in March, Asheville in May, Virginia Beach in July. Victoria would pack lingerie I'd never seen before, expensive pieces that she'd purchased without mentioning. "Since when do you dress up for dental hygienist conferences?" I asked, watching her fold a black lace teddy into her suitcase. "They have networking events, cocktail parties. I want to look professional." "Professional?" Her laugh was sharp. "You know what I mean. Put together, confident." She'd return from these conferences with stories about breakthrough seminars and innovative cleaning techniques. But when I asked specific questions, her answers were vague. The conference materials she brought home were generic brochures that could have been picked up anywhere. Meanwhile, our intimacy died a slow death. What had once been natural and frequent became perfunctory, then rare, then non-existent. Victoria always had an excuse. Tired from work, sore from the gym, stress from various undefined sources. "I just need some space to figure myself out," she said one night when I attempted to initiate contact. "It's not about you." But it felt like everything was about me, about what I wasn't doing, wasn't being, wasn't providing. The most painful part was watching her light up when her phone buzzed with messages. She'd smile in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months, her fingers flying across the screen in response. When I'd glance over, she'd angle the phone away. "Work stuff," she'd say. "Dr. Patterson is really demanding about our scheduling." Dr. Patterson. Always Dr. Patterson. The setup. The week before Thanksgiving, Victoria was unusually affectionate. She initiated intimacy for the first time in 2 months, made my favorite dinner without being asked, and even suggested we start planning a weekend getaway. "I know I've been distant," she said, curled against my chest afterward. "Work has been so stressful, and I've been taking it out on you. That's not fair." "We all go through rough patches," I replied, stroking her hair. It felt like the old Victoria was back, and I was pathetically grateful. Dr. Patterson has been scheduling so many emergency patients lately. This week is going to be brutal, late nights every single day, but after that, things should calm down. Monday through Thursday, Victoria worked her claimed late shifts. I noticed she started taking her gym bag to work, which seemed odd until she explained that she was going straight from the office to Iron Phoenix to blow off steam before coming home. "Smart thinking," I said. "Get that stress out." Friday morning, she kissed me goodbye with what felt like genuine affection. "Another late one tonight," she said, adjusting her scrubs. "Emergency root canal patient from 6 to 10. Dr. Patterson specifically requested me because of my experience with difficult extractions." "That's because you're the best," I said, meaning it. She smiled, but something flickered in her eyes. "I'll text you when I'm heading home." After she left, I decided to surprise her. We'd been disconnected for so long, and with her working such long hours, I thought I could pick up steaks for a weekend barbecue and maybe some flowers. A small gesture to show I appreciated her dedication. I had no idea I was about to discover the truth. Black Friday. At 6 o'clock that evening, I drove to the grocery store to pick up steaks for our weekend barbecue. The route took me past Riverside Dental Group, and I glanced over out of habit. Victoria's silver Lexus wasn't in the parking lot. Maybe she'd parked around back, I thought. The front lot could get crowded. But something nagged at me. I circled the block and parked across the street, feeling foolish but unable to shake the unease. The building was dark except for security lighting. There were no cars in the back lot either. Maybe Dr. Patterson had asked them to meet at a different location for the emergency patient. That made sense. Sometimes dental emergencies required hospital settings or specialized equipment. I called the office number. An answering service picked up on the first ring. "Riverside Dental Group, this is Kelly with Medical Answering Service. The office is closed until Monday morning. If this is a dental emergency, I can connect you with the on-call provider." My mouth went dry. "I'm sorry, did you say the office is closed?" "Yes, sir. They close at 5 on Fridays. Would you like me to connect you with Dr. Patterson's emergency line?" I hung up without answering. My hands were shaking as I opened my text messages and typed, "Hope the root canal is going well." Victoria's response came within 30 seconds. "Almost done. This one is really messy. Probably another hour." I screenshot her message, though I'm not sure why. Instinct, maybe. Evidence. I drove home. Victoria's car wasn't there either. Instead of going inside, I parked down the street and waited. My mind raced through possible explanations. Maybe there was a miscommunication about the location. Maybe the patient had been transferred to a hospital. Maybe Victoria had misunderstood Dr. Patterson's instructions. But deep down, I knew. While I waited, I opened our banking app and checked our credit card activity. There was a charge from the Marriott downtown bar at 6:32 p.m. The timestamp was 27 minutes after Victoria had texted me about being busy with her patient. I sat in my car for 3.5 hours watching our driveway, thinking about the last 6 months of lies and excuses and the gradual erosion of everything I'd thought was solid in my life. At 10:15 p.m., Victoria's Lexus pulled into our driveway. I watched her through my windshield as she checked herself in the rearview mirror, applied fresh lipstick, and sprayed perfume. She ran her fingers through her hair and adjusted her scrubs. The entire routine took 5 minutes. Then she got out of the car and walked to our front door like she was coming home from work. The performance. "God, what a night," Victoria said as she entered the house, letting the door close heavily behind her. She set her purse down and rubbed her temples dramatically. That patient was a nightmare. 3-hour root canal, and Dr. Patterson was breathing down my neck the entire time. I was sitting on the couch, waiting. Rough day? The worst. This guy had an infection that went deeper than the x-rays showed. We had to bring in specialized equipment, and the whole procedure took twice as long as expected. She kicked off her shoes and sank into the chair across from me. I'm exhausted. She looked anything but exhausted. Her makeup was fresh, her hair was perfectly styled, and there was an energy about her that I recognized from our early dating days. The glow of someone who'd been thoroughly satisfied. That's terrible, I said. What time did you finally finish? About 20 minutes ago. Dr. Patterson wanted a full debrief before I left, and then I had to sterilize all the extra equipment we used. You know how particular he is about protocol. The lies rolled off her tongue effortlessly. Each detail was specific enough to be believable, general enough to be unprovable. If I hadn't called the office, if I hadn't seen the credit card charge, if I hadn't watched her primping in the car, I might have believed every word. You should shower, I said carefully. You smell like the office. A brief flicker of panic crossed her face before she recovered. Yeah, that antiseptic smell really clings to you. Sometimes I think it gets into your pores. She stood and stretched, putting on a show of fatigue. I'm going to take a long hot shower and wash this day away. Good idea. While Victoria was in the bathroom, I checked her purse. Inside, I found a valet parking receipt from the Marriott downtown, time-stamped 6:15 p.m. I photographed it with my phone and put it back exactly where I'd found it. She showered for 30 minutes. When she finally came to bed, she was wearing the new perfume again. Feel better? I asked. Much. She curled up next to me, and for a moment I almost forgot what I'd discovered. This was the woman I'd married, the woman I'd planned to spend my life with. Sorry I've been so busy lately. Things should calm down after the holidays. I understand, I said. Work is work. But I was already planning. The investigation Saturday morning, Victoria announced she needed to go in for a follow-up with the previous night's emergency patient. Dr. Patterson wants to check the work we did and make sure there's no additional infection, she said, pulling on jeans and a sweater. Shouldn't take more than an hour. Of course. Patient care comes first. After she left, I drove to an office building downtown and met with James Crawford, a private investigator who came highly recommended from a divorce attorney I'd looked up online. Crawford was in his 50s, ex-FBI, with the kind of calm demeanor that inspired confidence. I need to know the truth about my wife's activities, I told him, laying out the basic facts. I think she's having an affair, but I need proof. Crawford listened without judgment, taking notes in a small notebook. What kind of evidence are you looking for? Everything. Photos, documentation, timeline of her activities. I need to know how long this has been going on and who she's involved with. My retainer is $5,000 for 1 month of surveillance. That includes comprehensive documentation, photographic evidence, and a detailed report of findings. I wrote the check without hesitation. Crawford also helped me install a GPS tracking device on Victoria's car. In North Carolina, it's legal for a spouse to track their partner's vehicle, and the device would provide real-time location data to help coordinate surveillance. That evening, we went to dinner with Victoria's parents. Throughout the meal, Victoria gushed about our perfect marriage and how grateful she was to have such a supportive, understanding husband. Marcus never complains when I have to work late, she said, squeezing my hand. He knows how important my career is to me. Her mother smiled. That's wonderful, dear. Though I was surprised to see you at South Point Mall on Thursday around noon. Weren't you supposed to be working? Victoria didn't miss a beat. Lunch break shopping. Dr. Patterson gives us 90 minutes for lunch, and I needed a few things. Another lie, delivered with the same confidence as all the others. On Sunday, I spent the afternoon reviewing our phone records online. Victoria's number showed hundreds of text messages and dozens of calls to a number that wasn't saved in our shared contacts. A reverse lookup revealed the number belonged to Dominic Cross, her trainer at Iron Phoenix. The pattern was clear. Messages every day, calls during her claimed work hours, and a sharp increase in frequency over the past 4 months. I'd found my answer. Week 1. Crawford's surveillance began on Monday. That evening, Victoria announced another late shift. "Dr. Patterson has 2 emergency patients tonight," she said, kissing my cheek. "I probably won't be home until 10. I'll keep dinner warm for you." Crawford followed her from our house to Iron Phoenix, then to an apartment complex called Madison Park. According to his report, Victoria parked next to a black pickup truck and was met in the parking lot by a tall, muscular man with dark hair. They embraced and kissed passionately before going inside together. The photographs Crawford took were devastating in their clarity. Victoria's face was unmistakable, and her body language showed complete comfort and familiarity with this man. This wasn't a new relationship. She returned home at 9:45 p.m. with stories about difficult extractions and demanding patience. Tuesday morning, I brought Victoria coffee in bed, acting like the devoted husband I'd always been. "You're so sweet," she said, sipping the coffee. "I'm sorry I've been so busy lately. Don't apologize for being dedicated to your work, though I hope things calm down soon. Actually, I'll probably need to work late again Thursday. Dr. Patterson is really pushing to clear the emergency backlog before Thanksgiving." "Of course, whatever you need to do." Wednesday was book club night. Crawford followed Victoria to a wine bar in downtown Raleigh, where she met 3 other people, the same man from Monday night and another couple. According to Crawford's notes, Victoria and the man were introduced to the other couple as Dom and Tori. Dom and Tori. They had couple names. The other couple posted photos on Instagram that night with the caption, "Double Date Night." Victoria was clearly visible in the background, laughing and holding hands with Dom. Thursday evening, the GPS tracker showed Victoria's car at Madison Park from 6 p.m. until 11 p.m. Crawford positioned himself where he could see the apartment entrance and captured video footage of Victoria and Dom entering together at 6:15 p.m. While they were together, I had dinner with my parents. Dad was having a particularly difficult day with his tremors, and Mom was struggling to maintain her usual optimism. "How are things with Victoria?" Mom asked while we cleaned up the kitchen. "Good," I said automatically. "She's been working a lot of late nights lately." "That's too bad. You two hardly see each other anymore." If she only knew. Friday, Victoria actually did work late, her normal shift pattern, probably to maintain her cover story. While she was genuinely at the office, I searched our home office. In the back of her filing cabinet, behind old tax returns, I found credit card statements for an account I didn't know existed. The statements told a story I wasn't prepared for. $8,000 in charges over the past 4 months. Hotels, lingerie stores, expensive restaurants, and jewelry purchases. She'd bought a watch from a high-end store for $3,000, more than twice what she'd spent on my last birthday gift. One entry stood out, a charge for $347 at Agent Provocateur, a lingerie boutique. The date was 2 days before her last dental conference. I photographed every page and put everything back exactly as I'd found it. The digital trail. During the second week of Crawford's surveillance, I dove deeper into the digital evidence. Victoria had been careful about her phone, but she'd been sloppy on social media. Dom's Instagram account was public, and it painted a clear picture. Among the typical fitness posts were photos of a woman's hand wearing jewelry I recognized as Victoria's. A picture of coffee cups on a table with the caption, "Perfect Morning," showed 2 cups and a set of keys with the distinctive BMW keychain I'd bought Victoria for Christmas. The most damning was a photo of rumpled bedsheets with the caption, "Sunday Motivation," posted 3 weeks earlier. I recognized those sheets. They were from our guest bedroom set that Victoria had claimed was too formal for everyday use. But the real discovery came when I found Victoria's second Instagram account, Tori Loves Fitness. The account was private, but Crawford had connections who could access it. The photos there told the complete story of Victoria's double life. Pictures of Victoria and Dom at restaurants, on hiking trails, and in what was clearly his apartment. Vacation photos from a weekend trip to Savannah that Victoria had claimed was a girls' spa weekend. And worst of all, photos taken in our own home when I was away helping my parents. The comments on these photos made my stomach turn. Dom called her my queen and the most beautiful woman in the world. Victoria responded with heart emojis and promises of forever. The financial investigation revealed even more disturbing details. Victoria had opened a separate savings account and had been diverting her bonuses there for months. The account contained $15,000, money that should have been going toward our shared goals. Venmo transactions between Victoria and Dom were labeled as training sessions and fitness coaching, but the amounts and frequency suggested something else entirely. She was essentially paying for dates with our money. I also discovered that Victoria had been using our joint credit card to buy Dom gifts. The $3,000 watch was just the beginning. There were charges for expensive dinners, weekend getaways, and even men's clothing purchases. During this period, I had lunch with Sarah, Victoria's colleague at the dental office. I played it casual, just a concerned husband checking in. Victoria's been working so many late nights lately, I said. I hope Dr. Patterson isn't overworking her. Sarah looked confused. Late nights? Victoria's been leaving early most days. She's usually gone by 4:30. Really? She told me Dr. Patterson was scheduling lots of emergency patients. Not that I know of, and if there were emergency patients, Dr. Patterson would handle them himself or call in the oral surgeon. Victoria's not certified for emergency procedures. Sarah's words confirmed what I already knew, but hearing it from someone else made it real in a way that hurt worse than all the photographs combined. The receptionist, Ashley, not the gym Ashley Victoria talked about, but the office Ashley, was apparently covering for Victoria's early departures. According to Sarah, Ashley thought it was romantic that Victoria was sneaking out to spend time with her boyfriend. They all know? I asked. The younger staff think it's exciting, like a soap opera. The older employees. Sarah shrugged. They disapprove, but it's not their business. Dr. Patterson, it turned out, had no idea about Victoria's fictional overtime hours or emergency patients. He'd been attributing the office's recent efficiency to improved teamwork, not realizing that one of his employees was committing time theft on a massive scale. The full picture. By the third week, Crawford had compiled a comprehensive dossier that read like a catalog of betrayal. 47 photographs documented Victoria and Dom's relationship in excruciating detail. Hotel receipts showed they'd been meeting at expensive properties throughout the Triangle area for months. The surveillance videos were perhaps the most painful evidence to review. Watching Victoria walk into Dom's apartment with the confidence of someone who belonged there, seeing her laugh and touch him with an intimacy that had vanished from our marriage. It was like watching a stranger wearing my wife's face. Crawford had also uncovered something Victoria didn't know. Dom was cheating on her too. The investigator had photographed him with another woman, Melissa, a blonde who also trained at Iron Phoenix. The timestamps showed that Dom was rotating between Victoria and Melissa, sometimes seeing both in the same day. Your wife isn't the only woman he's manipulating, Crawford explained, showing me photos of Dom and Melissa at the same restaurants where he'd taken Victoria. This guy has a pattern. He targets married women at the gym, probably because they're less likely to make demands on his time. The pregnancy scare discovery came when I found a home pregnancy test box in our bathroom trash. Victoria had never mentioned taking a test, and when I checked the pharmacy records on our insurance, I found she'd also purchased Plan B emergency contraception the same day. The timeline was devastating. Victoria had potentially been pregnant with another man's child, and had handled the situation without saying a word to me. The casual way she'd disposed of evidence of such a significant event showed how completely she'd compartmentalized her deception. During this period, I began protecting our assets. I opened a separate bank account and started redirecting my salary there. I moved important documents, our marriage certificate, property deeds, insurance policies, to a safety deposit box that only I could access. The consultation with divorce attorney Rebecca Sterling was sobering but encouraging. North Carolina's alienation of affection laws meant I could potentially sue Dom for damages related to destroying my marriage. More importantly, Victoria's adultery would bar her from receiving alimony and could significantly impact property division. The evidence you've gathered is comprehensive, Sterling explained. In an at-fault state like North Carolina, adultery cases with this level of documentation typically result in favorable outcomes for the innocent spouse. I wasn't just planning a divorce. I was building a case. The trap. The fourth week of surveillance coincided with Victoria's announcement that she'd been selected for a special training program that would require her to travel to Charlotte for extended periods. "It's a huge opportunity," she explained over dinner. "Dr. Patterson specifically recommended me because of my recent performance improvements." "That's wonderful. When does it start?" "After the new year. I'll probably need to go up there for long weekends, maybe even full weeks at a time." More lies, but now I understood their purpose. Dom had probably been offered a job in Charlotte, or maybe they were planning to relocate together. Victoria was laying the groundwork for more extended absences that would eventually lead to her asking for a separation. I decided it was time to act. Crawford's final surveillance report included a detail that would prove crucial. Victoria and Dom were planning a vacation to Cancun over New Year's week. They'd booked flights and a resort under false names. Victoria was traveling as Tori Cross, using a fake ID that Dom had apparently helped her obtain. This wasn't just adultery anymore. Victoria had crossed into identity fraud, which carried serious legal consequences. On December 15th, I made my move. I called Victoria at work during her lunch break. "Hey, I was thinking we should plan something special for New Year's. Maybe that weekend getaway you mentioned?" "Oh, I don't know if I can. Dr. Patterson might need me to work extra shifts during the holidays." "Really? Even New Year's week?" "Especially then. People tend to have dental emergencies during holidays." "That's too bad. I was really looking forward to spending time together." "I know, baby. I'm sorry. Maybe we can do something in February." February, after her fake vacation with Dom. That afternoon, I met with Rebecca Sterling and presented all the evidence Crawford had gathered. Together, we developed a strategy that would protect my interests while exposing Victoria's deception in the most legally advantageous way possible. "We'll file for divorce on January 3rd, Sterling explained, after she returns from her fraudulent vacation. The timing will maximize the impact of the evidence and minimize her ability to hide assets or claims she was trying to reconcile. I also met with HR at Titan Construction to discuss potential schedule flexibility. My supervisor, knowing about my father's health issues, was understanding about my need for time off to handle family matters. Everything was in place. The holidays' Christmas was surreal. Victoria played the role of loving wife perfectly, buying thoughtful gifts and hosting her family for Christmas Eve dinner. She gave me a custom leather portfolio with my initials embossed on the cover. "For all your important projects," she said, kissing my cheek as I opened it. I gave her a pendant necklace with a small diamond. Nothing extravagant, but elegant. She put it on immediately and admired herself in the mirror. "It's beautiful. Thank you." What she didn't know was that the necklace contained a GPS tracker invisible to the naked eye. Crawford had recommended it as a way to monitor her movements during the Cancun trip. Victoria's parents were effusive in their praise for our marriage during Christmas dinner. "You two give us hope," her father said, raising his wine glass. 7 years and still acting like newlyweds." Victoria blushed and squeezed my hand. "Marcus is the best husband a woman could ask for." The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have believed we were the perfect couple her parents saw. On December 28th, Victoria announced that Dr. Patterson had called an emergency meeting for his key staff. She'd need to fly to Charlotte that afternoon and wouldn't return until January 2nd. "I'm really sorry," she said, packing the expensive lingerie I'd seen on the credit card statements. "The timing is terrible, but this training program is too important to pass up." "I understand. Career opportunities don't wait for convenient timing." I drove her to the airport and kissed her goodbye at the departure gate. "Have a safe trip," I said. "Text me when you land." "I will. I love you." "I love you too." It was the last time we would say those words to each other. The reckoning Victoria's texts from Charlotte were masterpieces of deception. Photos of generic hotel rooms and conference center lobbies, complaints about boring seminars and terrible hotel food. She even sent pictures of her study materials, dental hygiene pamphlets that could have been picked up anywhere. Meanwhile, the GPS tracker told a different story. Victoria was at a luxury resort in Cancun, registered under her false identity. Crawford had arranged for a colleague in Mexico to document her activities there, and the photos that came back showed Victoria and Dom living it up like honeymooners. Poolside drinks, romantic dinners, sunset walks on the beach, all while she was supposedly attending professional development seminars. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. On January 2nd, Victoria called to say her flight had been delayed and she wouldn't be home until late that evening. "The weather in Charlotte is terrible," she complained. "All flights are backed up." According to the tracker, she was still in Cancun. Her actual flight wasn't scheduled to depart until the next morning. While waiting for her return, I spent the evening making final preparations. I moved the rest of my personal belongings to a temporary apartment I'd rented across town. Important documents, family photos, and my most valuable tools went into storage. When Victoria finally arrived home on January 3rd, she found me waiting in the living room with divorce papers and a thick folder containing Crawford's evidence. "What's all this?" she asked, setting down her suitcase. "How was Charlotte?" Something in my tone made her freeze. "Fine, long, educational." I opened the folder and spread out photographs of her Cancun vacation across the coffee table. "Really? Because these suggest you were somewhere much warmer." Victoria's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, panic, and finally defiant anger. "You had me followed?" "I had my wife investigated because she'd become a stranger. Turns out I was right." She looked at the photos for a long moment, then back at me. "Marcus, I can explain." "Don't." I held up my hand. "Don't insult my intelligence with more lies. I know about Dom. I know about the secret credit card, the fake Instagram account, the money you've been stealing from our joint accounts. I know about the pregnancy scare and the Plan B. I know you've been committing time fraud at work and identity fraud with that fake passport." Each revelation hit her like a physical blow. By the end, she was sitting on the edge of the couch staring at the floor. "How long?" she whispered. "How long have I known?" "About a month." "How long have you been cheating?" "Based on the evidence, at least 8 months. But something tells me it's been longer." Victoria looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been living a double life, stealing money from our marriage to fund your affair, and lying to me every single day. The woman I married died sometime last year, and I've been living with an imposter ever since." She stood up suddenly, anger flashing in her eyes. "You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I'm seeing Dom. Yes, I love him. And yes, I was planning to leave you. You want to know why? Enlighten me." "Because you're boring, Marcus. You're predictable and safe and completely passionless. You come home every day, work on your little furniture projects, worry about your parents, and expect me to be grateful for such a stable, comfortable life. Do you know what it's like to feel like you're suffocating in someone else's idea of happiness?" Her words stung, but they also clarified everything. "So, you decided to steal money, commit fraud, and destroy our marriage instead of having an honest conversation about your feelings? I tried to talk to you. I told you I needed space, that I was feeling restless. But you just nodded and went back to your woodworking like my feelings didn't matter. When did you try to talk to me? When you were working late or at book club or attending fake dental conferences?" She had no answer for that. I handed her the divorce papers. "I'm filing on grounds of adultery. In North Carolina, that means you get nothing. No alimony, no claim to assets acquired during the marriage, and no sympathy from the court." Victoria's face went white. "You can't do this." "I can and I am. I'm also suing your boyfriend for alienation of affection and criminal conversation. Between the two lawsuits, you and Dom are going to learn that actions have consequences. Marcus, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling, start over." "Start over?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Victoria, you spent 8 months systematically betraying our marriage while lying to my face every single day. You stole money, committed fraud, and exposed me to potential STDs without my knowledge or consent. There's no coming back from that." She started crying then, real tears that might have moved me 6 months earlier. Now they just seemed like another manipulation. "Where am I supposed to go?" she sobbed. "I don't know and I don't care. You made your choice when you decided Dom was more important than our marriage. Go stay with him. He's not ready for that kind of commitment." Of course he wasn't. Dom was sleeping with at least 2 women, possibly more. Victoria was just another conquest to him, but she was too blinded by infatuation to see it. That's not my problem anymore, I said, standing up. I've already moved my things out. The locks will be changed tomorrow morning, and your name is being removed from all our accounts. You have until Sunday to collect your belongings. This is my house, too. No, it's not. We bought this house with money I saved before we were married, and I have the documentation to prove it. The only thing you contributed was the down payment, which you'll get back in the settlement. Everything else stays with me. Victoria looked around the house we'd renovated together, the space where we'd hosted countless dinner parties and talked about our future. For the first time, I think she realized what she was losing. I never meant for this to happen, she whispered. Yes, you did. You chose this. Every lie, every deception, every dollar you stole, those were choices. And now you get to live with the consequences. I picked up my jacket and keys. Your affair partner is about to discover that destroying marriages in North Carolina is expensive. I hope he was worth it. As I headed for the door, Victoria called after me. Marcus, wait! I turned back one last time. I'm sorry, she said, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married. I really am sorry. I know you are, I replied. You're sorry you got caught. Legal warfare. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly once the evidence was presented. Rebecca Sterling had prepared meticulously, and Victoria's attorney, a young public defender she'd been assigned after her first lawyer quit when she couldn't pay his retainer, was completely overwhelmed. The adultery case was airtight. Crawford's surveillance photos, the financial records, and Victoria's own social media posts created an irrefutable timeline of deception. When Victoria's attorney tried to argue that the marriage had been troubled before the affair began, Sterling countered with evidence of Victoria's elaborate lies and systematic theft. Your Honor, Sterling argued during one hearing, Mrs. Hamilton didn't stray because the marriage was failing. She actively sabotaged the marriage to justify her adultery. This isn't a case of two people growing apart. It's a case of one spouse systematically defrauding the other while conducting an elaborate affair. Victoria sat next to her attorney looking smaller and more defeated each time we appeared in court. The confident, vibrant woman who'd walked out of my life had been replaced by someone who seemed to shrink a little more each day. The criminal conversation lawsuit against Dom was even more devastating. North Carolina allows wronged spouses to sue their partner's affair partner for damages, and Dom clearly hadn't understood the legal implications of his actions. When Dom's attorney tried to argue that he hadn't known Victoria was married, Sterling produced Instagram photos showing Dom wearing Victoria's wedding ring as a necklace in several posts. The evidence that he'd not only known about the marriage but had actively mocked it turned the case into a rout. Mr. Cross actively pursued a married woman, documented their relationship on social media, and even wore her wedding ring as a trophy, Sterling argued. This isn't an innocent romance. It's the deliberate destruction of a marriage by someone who thought he was above consequences. The financial discovery phase revealed even more disturbing details. Dom had been using Victoria to help finance his lifestyle, accepting expensive gifts while simultaneously seeing other women. Victoria had unknowingly been funding her own betrayal. When Victoria learned about Melissa and the other women during cross-examination, her composure finally cracked completely. You mean he was lying to me too? She asked her attorney, in a voice loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear. Mrs. Hamilton, the judge said firmly, please consult with your attorney before speaking. But the damage was done. Victoria's realization that she'd destroyed her marriage for a man who'd been deceiving her just as thoroughly created a moment of clarity that was painful to witness, even for me. Professional consequences. While the legal proceedings continued, Victoria's professional life collapsed. Dr. Patterson had been understanding when Victoria first requested time off for the divorce proceedings, but when he learned about the time theft and fraudulent overtime claims, his attitude changed dramatically. I trusted you with responsibilities because I thought you were dedicated to patient care, he told Victoria during what would be their final meeting. Instead, you were stealing time and lying to patients about your qualifications. The Dental Hygienist Board launched their own investigation after Dr. Patterson filed a complaint. Victoria's license was suspended pending a full review of her conduct, effectively ending her career in North Carolina. Without her dental hygienist income and facing mounting legal fees, Victoria was forced to take retail jobs to survive. The woman who'd once commanded respect in a professional medical environment found herself folding clothes at department stores and ringing up groceries at Food Lion. Meanwhile, my own career flourished. The stress of the divorce had initially affected my work performance, but once the legal proceedings began moving forward, I found myself more focused and creative than I'd been in years. Titan Construction promoted me to regional manager with a significant salary increase. I also began selling the custom furniture pieces I'd been crafting for years. Word spread through Raleigh's design community about my work, and suddenly I had a waiting list of clients willing to pay premium prices for handcrafted pieces. What had started as a hobby became a lucrative side business. The irony wasn't lost on me. Victoria had called me boring and predictable, but the skills and interests she'd dismissed were now generating more income than her professional dental career ever had. The stalking phase. Victoria's behavior became increasingly erratic as the reality of her situation set in. The final divorce decree awarded me the house, the majority of our assets, and a judgment against her for the money she'd stolen from our joint accounts. Dom was ordered to pay $75,000 in damages for criminal conversation and alienation of affection. Money he didn't have, which meant Victoria was partially liable for his debt. Instead of accepting the consequences and moving forward, Victoria began what could only be described as a stalking campaign. It started with phone calls from different numbers after I blocked her main line. The messages began as desperate pleas for reconciliation and gradually escalated to accusations and threats. "You destroyed my life over nothing," she said in one voicemail. "I made one mistake, and you turned it into a nuclear war." One mistake. 8 months of systematic deception, thousands of dollars in theft, and identity fraud reduced to one mistake. When I didn't respond to the calls, Victoria began showing up at my workplace. Titan Construction's security had to escort her from the premises 3 times in 1 week after she demanded to see me. "She seems genuinely unstable," the security chief told me after the 3rd incident. "We've issued a trespass warning, but you might want to consider getting a restraining order." The text messages were worse. Victoria created new phone numbers and social media accounts faster than I could block them, sending hundreds of messages that ranged from pleading to threatening. "I know where you live," read one text. "I know your schedule. You can't hide from me forever." Another message was more personal. "Grace seems nice. I hope she knows what kind of man you really are." Grace was a landscape architect I'd met through a client. We'd had coffee twice, and somehow Victoria had found out about her. The threat was subtle but clear. When Victoria appeared at my house at 3 in the morning, pounding on the door and screaming for me to face her like a man, I finally filed for a domestic violence protective order. The hearing was brief but disturbing. Victoria represented herself and used the opportunity to deliver a rambling monologue about how I'd systematically destroyed her life and turned everyone against her. "He's obsessed with revenge," she told the judge. "He can't accept that marriages sometimes end, so he's trying to punish me for being honest about my feelings." Honest about her feelings. That's how Victoria had rewritten history in her mind. Her months of elaborate deception had become being honest about feelings. The judge reviewed the police reports, witness statements, and documentation of Victoria's harassment before issuing a 12-month protective order. "Mrs. Hamilton," the judge said firmly, "you will have no contact with Mr. Hamilton, directly or indirectly. You will not go within 500 feet of his home, workplace, or any location where he is present. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest." Victoria's response was to create a blog called The Truth About Marcus Hamilton, where she posted a wildly distorted version of our story that painted her as the victim of an abusive, controlling husband who'd entrapped her in a loveless marriage and weaponized the legal system when she tried to leave. The blog attracted a small following of people who related to Victoria's narrative of victimhood, but it also documented her ongoing obsession with me in a way that would prove useful if she violated the protective order. Moving forward. 18 months after discovering Victoria's affair, I met Grace at a client consultation. She was designing gardens for a luxury home where I was building custom built-ins, and we struck up a conversation about the relationship between architecture and landscape design. "The interior and exterior spaces should complement each other," she said, sketching modifications to her original plan. "When people look out these windows, They should see something that feels connected to the space they're in. Grace was everything Victoria wasn't. Thoughtful, genuine, and completely comfortable with herself. She didn't need constant attention or validation, and she appreciated craftsmanship in all its forms. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally. Grace knew about my divorce and Victoria's ongoing harassment, but she didn't see me as a victim or a project to fix. She saw me as a man who'd survived a difficult situation and emerged stronger. "You could have become bitter," she told me one evening as we watched the sunset from my deck. "A lot of people would have. But you chose to build something better instead." Grace was right. The custom furniture business had grown beyond my wildest expectations. I'd been featured in several design magazines, and my pieces were selling for 10 times what I'd charged just 2 years earlier. The hobby Victoria had dismissed as boring had become the foundation for financial independence. More importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts again. The signs of Victoria's deception had been there from the beginning, but I'd ignored them because I wanted to believe in our marriage. I wouldn't make that mistake again. When Grace and I became engaged after 18 months together, it felt like the natural progression of something real, rather than the desperate grab for happiness that my marriage to Victoria had become. Victoria's descent. While I was building a new life, Victoria's continued to unravel. The blog about our marriage had attracted the attention of several of Dom's other victims, and they'd compared notes about his pattern of targeting married women. Victoria learned that she'd been one of at least 5 women Dom had been seeing simultaneously during their relationship. The man she'd destroyed her marriage for had never intended to build a life with her. She'd just been convenient until something better came along. Dom eventually married Melissa, the blonde from the gym, in a ceremony that Victoria found out about through social media. According to mutual acquaintances, Victoria spent several days calling in sick to work and was found by her landlord passed out drunk in her apartment. Her parents, who'd initially been supportive, gradually distanced themselves as Victoria's behavior became more erratic. When she was arrested for violating the protective order by showing up at my workplace again, they refused to post her bail. "We love you," her mother told her during the jail visit that Victoria later wrote about on her blog. "But we can't enable this obsession anymore. You need professional help." Victoria's response was to cut contact with her family and move to a different city where she could start fresh. But starting fresh is impossible when you haven't addressed the underlying problems that created the mess in the first place. Her social media posts from this period showed a woman desperately trying to recreate the excitement she'd felt during her affair. She dated a series of men who were obviously wrong for her, each relationship ending when her intensity and neediness became too much. The last I heard about Victoria was from Sarah, her former co-worker, who'd run into her at a grocery store in Burlington. She looked, Sarah paused, searching for the right word, defeated. Like someone who'd been fighting a war for years and finally realized she was going to lose. Victoria had asked about me during that encounter, and Sarah had mentioned my engagement to Grace. According to Sarah, Victoria's reaction was a strange mixture of rage and sadness. She kept saying, "It should have been me," Sarah told me. But when I asked what she meant, she couldn't explain it. That summed up Victoria perfectly. She knew she'd lost something valuable, but she couldn't articulate what it was or take responsibility for how she'd lost it. The wedding Grace and I were married at the Biltmore estate on a perfect October morning. The ceremony was everything my first wedding had pretended to be, genuine, joyful, and surrounded by people who truly supported our relationship. Victoria's parents attended, which surprised me. Her mother had reached out months earlier to apologize for Victoria's behavior and to ask if they could maintain a relationship with me despite everything that had happened. "You were like a son to us for 7 years," she'd said. "We don't want Victoria's choices to erase all the good memories we have of that time." Having them there felt like closure in a way I hadn't expected. These people had raised Victoria, loved her, and been disappointed by her choices just as I had. Their presence was a reminder that Victoria's actions didn't negate all the positive relationships that had grown out of our marriage. The furniture business had expanded enough that I was able to take a month-long honeymoon in New Zealand with Grace. We spent our days hiking through incredible landscapes and our evenings in bed and breakfasts, where I sketched ideas for new pieces inspired by the natural beauty around us. "This is what partnership looks like," Grace said one morning as we watched the sunrise over Milford Sound. Two people building something together instead of one person tearing everything down. When we returned to Raleigh, I put the house Victoria and I had shared on the market. The memories there had been poisoned, and Grace deserved a space that was truly ours. We found a property in the mountains where I could build a workshop, and Grace could create the garden she'd been dreaming about. Our new home became a showcase for both our talents. Grace's landscape design complemented my custom woodwork perfectly, creating a space that felt like a work of art where we happened to live. The final encounter. Victoria's father passed away 3 years after our divorce, and I attended the funeral to support her mother. Victoria was there, of course, looking older and harder than I remembered. She'd gained weight, her hair was poorly maintained, and she wore the defensive expression of someone who'd been beaten down by life. During the reception, she cornered me near the parking lot. "Marcus," she said, and her voice was different, smaller, more uncertain. "I need to talk to you." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I stopped walking. Grace was inside talking with Victoria's mother, and I could see them through the window. "I've been thinking about everything that happened," Victoria said. "About what I did to us. To you." Victoria. "No, let me say this. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was selfish and stupid, and I thought I deserved more excitement than what we had." She was crying now, and for a moment I felt an echo of the compassion I'd once had for her. "I watch your interviews in those design magazines," she continued. "I see pictures of your wedding, your new house, your success, and I know that should have been my life. Not the specific details, but the happiness, the partnership, the feeling of building something beautiful with someone you love. Victoria, you can still build a good life, but you have to stop looking backward." "How?" she asked, and the question seemed genuine. "How do you move forward when you know you destroyed everything good you ever had for something that was never real?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But continuing to obsess over the past isn't helping you." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Your wife seems nice." "Grace?" "She is." "Are you happy?" "Yes." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "I'm glad," she said finally. "I mean that. You deserved better than what I gave you. I hope you find peace, Victoria. I really do." She looked at me one last time, and I saw a flicker of the woman I'd married. Not the passionate, exciting version from our early days, but the vulnerable person underneath all the performance. "I'm sorry, Marcus, for all of it." "I know you are." I walked back into the funeral home where Grace was waiting with a concerned expression. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, taking her hand. "Everything's fine." Through the window, I watched Victoria get into a battered Honda and drive away. I never saw her again. Epilogue. 5 years later, Grace and I welcomed our son, James, into the world. He was born in the spring, when Grace's garden was in full bloom and the workshop I'd built was filled with sunlight streaming through the skylights. Holding my son for the first time, I thought about the life Victoria and I had planned together. The house at the Outer Banks, the children we'd talked about having someday, the retirement we'd envisioned spending together. That life was gone, and I was grateful for its absence. The life I'd built with Grace was better than anything Victoria and I could have created together because it was based on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine partnership. We made decisions together, supported each other's dreams, and faced challenges as a team. The furniture business had grown into a company with 12 employees and a waiting list that stretched 6 months. My pieces were featured in design publications across the country, and we'd just signed a contract to furnish a luxury resort in Charleston. Grace's landscape architecture firm had won several prestigious awards, and she'd been invited to design gardens for a botanical preserve in Costa Rica. We were planning to spend James's first Christmas there, combining work with family time in a way that would have been impossible in my previous marriage. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I'd never discovered Victoria's affair, if she'd managed to keep her deception hidden until she was ready to leave. Would I have spent years wondering what I'd done wrong? Would I have blamed myself for the failure of our marriage? Probably, and I would have been wrong. Victoria's betrayal taught me that some people are willing to destroy everything beautiful in their lives for the temporary excitement of something new. But it also taught me that surviving betrayal doesn't make you bitter. It makes you wiser about what real love looks like. Real love doesn't require deception. It doesn't need elaborate lies or secret accounts or fake identities. Real love is Grace falling asleep on my shoulder while I sketch furniture designs at the kitchen table. It's working together in the garden while James naps in his carrier. It's the absolute certainty that the person you're building a life with is exactly who they appear to be. Victoria called that life boring. She was wrong about that too. The last I heard, Victoria was working as a shift manager at a chain restaurant in Jacksonville, Florida. She'd never remarried, never had children, and according to the mutual acquaintance who mentioned her, seemed to have settled into a quiet life of acceptance rather than the explosive passion she'd once craved. I hoped that was true. I hoped she'd found peace, even if it wasn't the life she'd dreamed of. As for me, I'd learned that the best revenge isn't elaborate or cruel. It's simply building something beautiful and refusing to let someone else's choices destroy your capacity for happiness. I built custom furniture that brought joy to people's homes. I loved a woman who loved me completely in return. I was raising a son who would grow up understanding that integrity and honesty weren't optional values. They were the foundation everything else was built on. Victoria had called me predictable, as if that were an insult. But predictability in a marriage means your partner can count on you. It means your word has value. It means you're the same person in private that you are in public. I was predictable in all the ways that mattered, and Grace treasured that predictability as much as Victoria had scorned it. Standing in my workshop one evening, watching Grace read to James in the garden through the open door, I realized that everything I'd lost when my first marriage ended had been replaced by something infinitely better. Victoria had been right about one thing. I was boring and predictable and passionless. And I'd never been happier in my life. The truth doesn't need elaborate staging or careful timing or dramatic reveals. The truth simply is, and eventually, it surfaces no matter how deeply someone tries to bury it. Every lie creates a debt that must eventually be paid. Victoria spent years trying to outrun that debt, but it followed her everywhere, to new cities, new jobs, new relationships that couldn't survive the weight of her unresolved guilt. Meanwhile, I'd built my new life on the foundation of complete honesty, and that foundation had proven strong enough to support everything beautiful that came after. Sometimes the patient man's revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well while the person who betrayed him learns to live with the consequences of their choices. That lesson took 7 years of marriage, 1 devastating night of discovery, and 5 years of rebuilding to fully understand. But it was worth learning. As I tucked James into his crib that night and kissed Grace goodnight, I felt the deep satisfaction of a man who'd survived the worst thing he could imagine and emerged not bitter, but grateful. Victoria had destroyed our marriage, but she'd also freed me to find something better. For that, at least, I owed her my thanks.